Welcome to Sounding Board, a production of Seroptimus International of Novato. Today our show is titled Nifty at 90, and we'll be talking to Barbara Patten from Belvedere, who recently just turned 90. She's an author, a fluent Spanish speaker, a teacher, passionate about exercise, and loves life and all her friends and activities in it. It's hard to get on her schedule, actually, and you will be happy to hear what she has to say and want to be like her regardless of your age. But first, before I introduce Barbara, a word about Seroptimus. Our mission is to improve the lives of women and girls through programs leading to social and economic empowerment. I'm Barbara Herwick, and I'll be your moderator today. So Barbara, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for asking me. I'm kind of excited about the whole thing.
So Nifty at 90, you have to tell us your secret, and I think we should start at the beginning.
At the very beginning, when I was born.
Well, let's start with your family picture, this picture right here.
Oh, yes. Well, I was from a family of 6 children. I was the 5th, so the picture was when there were only 5 of us, and I always thought I was the best anyway, even though I was the 5th. And born in a small town in Illinois, and had a wonderful childhood as it went along. Brothers that teased me, because isn't that usually what happens when you have brothers? Of course.
And
I was going to ask you, do you want to hear a story of when I was about 10 years old? Well, when he came along, I still thought I was the best because I was the last little girl, and I really could get my dad to do most anything. So I don't know what else to say about that, except I do remember when I was I didn't even mention this the other day, we had rabbits. And my brothers had built hutches, and they were white rabbits with wiggly ears and so forth. And I think that's where I developed my love for rabbits. And then now I don't want any more rabbits. I've overdone it. But anyway, my family was a joyous family, wonderful. I loved being a part of a large family.
Right, and then you had that rebellious spirit, though, at an early age. Remember you mentioned about your brothers teasing you?
Yes, not only my brothers teased me, everybody seemed to tease me, but boy, I was going to fight back, and I still do. If I think that it's not right, I will say something. Do you want to hear a wonderful story about popcorn?
Yes.
Okay, this is just unbelievable. One of my older sisters was watching over us one evening. My parents had gone out, and I don't know where the rest of them were. And she'd kind of liked to be a boss, and I didn't like somebody bossing me. But finally she said, as the evening went on, "It's time to go to bed, Barbara." And I said, "You can't make me." She said, "Yes, I can." And I said, "No." And she started after me, and I ran up the stairs, and I stopped in the middle of the stairs because she said, keep going, you're going to bed. And I said, "You can't make me." I don't know where in the world this word came from, but I said, "You can't make me, you sassafras bull." and I continued on up and went into her room. Oh, Barbara, can you imagine? She had kept this one little piece of popcorn that looked like Mickey Mouse. You know how popcorn is that way? It had been sitting there. I picked it up and I said, "You come another step further and I'll eat this." And she said, "You wouldn't dare." And I said, "Yes, I would." She took the step. I popped it in my mouth. She absolutely couldn't say a word. She turned and just left me.
And you were about 10 then?
I was about 10 years old then, yes. And then the other time about brothers and sister relations, and I was a little older then, but old enough to know I could stand on my own. My older brothers liked to tease, as all boys do, I discovered when I had my own boy. But they like to tease almost, they sometimes would almost make my sisters cry, but not I. I'll remember one time we were in the kitchen and my brother put his arm up like this and said, free air, free air. In other words, I couldn't just get out there at all. And he did that, and I thought, I'm not going to take this anymore. And I just took my foot and gave him a kick, and he almost fell down the cellar stair. When I think of all these things, I think, my gosh.
You had a mind of your own
I
at
had
an
a
early
mind of
age.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's fast forward to high school. Here's a picture of you in high school, your senior year, 1944. And tell us how you got this idea as a senior. You grew up outside of Chicago. How you got this idea that you wanted to come to California? You had no relatives out here or family or friends.
Well, it was just, I've always been curious about what is beyond where I am. And I knew there was a greater world. And I also, my goodness, living in Illinois, you're living in a lot of snow and all of that stuff. And in fact, I remember now, as you mentioned that, I looked in the Saturday Evening Post. That was an old magazine. You may remember it. Mm-hmm. And there was a big article on colleges in California, and they showed the beaches and so forth. And I thought, oh boy, that's for me. And aside from that, I had taken aptitude tests, and it seemed to point to language for me. And I thought, that's where I really want to go. My father, the last little girl, he didn't particularly want me to go away that far. And I was accepted to UCLA. But then that was, I'm 90, that was a long time ago. That was when they still had a lot of Army people and Navy people in the colleges. And so after they accepted me, they said, but we have no room for her. And my father really showed his colors because he got on the telephone, he talked to the dean of admissions, he talked to the dean of women, he talked to everyone, and he said, you have accepted my daughter, you need to find a place for her, which they did. And so there I was at UCLA.
So he was a real supporter and cheerleader for you through the years.
He really was, all the time.
So here's a picture of you in the sorority. No, not this. I'm not sure. Is this a sorority?
It was a party.
A party, and you are on the right-hand side. Mm-hmm. And this is now you're with your husband to be.
To be, yes.
Doug.
And that was probably, I met my husband to be when I was a junior in college.
So you were about 20.
Yeah, I was about 20.
And you stayed married for almost 52 years.
Yes,
until his passing.
That's right, until he passed away.
Right. So what was that quip you told me the other night about the sorority sister, about you and rules?
Oh. Well, this one little girl said, and she said, you sure have fun all the time, Barbara. And I said, yes. And she said, as a matter of fact, you like rules, but you don't think they're ever made for you. Which I suppose, no, I wasn't naughty. I love that word. But I don't know whether, have you ever heard of water bags?
No, I know water balloons.
Well, water bags are similar maybe, but you just take a small paper bag, you fill it with water, and if you live in a house where I was living, you could get on the second floor and lean out the window, and as people were coming up, you could just drop the water bag.
And you participated?
Oh, I participated in that, yes, indeed.
Now, tell us that I do believe there was a Venezuelan boyfriend.
That happened, yes, when I was a junior. It was earlier than that. I was a sophomore. I decided I had to really learn to speak Spanish, even because back then, back in the Netherlands, heavens, you were translating all the time, but I wanted to speak. So I joined the Spanish club. Well, there was Diego Serpa, white shirt, dark skin, dark eyes, and he and I hit it off. And he was quite a dancer. But Also, this made for the rules, not for me. He would come, he could play the guitar, he could sing, and we had a balcony out in front of the sorority house, and he would come and serenade me. But I decided that had to stop. I knew I couldn't live in another culture. But that was just...
That was pretty adventurous.
Pretty
adventurous. Back
adventurous.
in those days.
Back in those days, yes, it was indeed.
So let's fast forward. You graduated in 1948. You married in 1949. And then you said you followed the Revolutionary Road. What did you mean by that?
Well, the Revolutionary Road, in fact, I think there was a book that had that title or something. It was, you went to college, you met your sweetheart, you married him, then you bought a house and you had a baby and so forth. And I did all of those things in that order. And I loved my husband dearly, but I don't think today, if I was that age, that I would do that.
Really?
But we were expected, or at least, yes, we were expected to do it.
So you don't think you would follow that road today?
I don't know. If I were a young woman today, and we can look around, I look at my grandchildren and so forth, they're not going off and getting married at 21
Right.
and having a baby and so forth.
Right.
But I don't regret it.
Well, you mentioned too to me that you, while you were at UCLA, you had plans to be an interpreter when you graduated.
That was it. I wasn't thinking of teaching or any of that. I was going to be the grand interpreter for a large corporation, and that would enable me to travel all over because I knew I wanted to travel.
Okay, so that you had your lust for travel early.
Very early, and you know what did it were geography books. The education I had in Illinois was fantastic, but the geography books would have these marvelous pictures. And my Spanish books, the very first Spanish books that I had, dealt with everything in Spain. And so I saw the places that were there and I wanted to go to them. And when I went, finally, it was just like turning the pages in Quinito en España.
Wow, so it was just right up your alley.
Just right up my alley.
So then you moved to Marin City from San Francisco, and
To Marin City, did you say?
I mean Marin County.
Yes,
sorry,
yes.
Marin County. And you mentioned even in marriage you were on the go, skiing, tennis. You were really into sports.
Yes, I really was. I played tennis sometimes 4 and 5 times a week and entered all kinds of tournaments. Exercise was always a part of our family, not to the extreme that I went. But I think my husband might have said someplace along the way, don't you think 5 times a week on the tennis court is a little much? I felt a little chagrined over that.
But then you went back to school when your kids were, what, in...
They were early in high school.
So tell us about how that happened.
Well, one day I'm home. My husband is away on a business trip. The telephone rings, and somebody said, this is the Mill Valley School District and so forth, and we are going to do a pilot program for Spanish. And I said, well, how did you know that I knew anything about Spanish? Well, I belonged to the University Women at that point, and they must have looked at that and so forth. Anyway, they said, would you like to be interviewed for the job? And I talked to my husband that night, and I said, what do you think? He said, oh, you never know. And I said, but I'm not a teacher. So I called and said, yes, I would be interviewed. But I said, what should I do? And they said, just say how you'd set up the class. Well, all I knew was I could set it up like Senora Monteau. So I got the job, and I started in and loved it. And one day, Bill Lavorne, the principal at Old Mill School, came in to observe. Afterwards, he said, Barbara, you are a teacher. Go back to school, because all I had was my BA, which I thought was pretty darn good. And so it took me a long time to finally take that step, but I finally took the step, and I was credentialed at 40.
My goodness.
Yeah, and loved it. It changed my life. Absolutely changed my life.
How did it change your life?
It made me more receptive to differences in people, because there were differences in children. I loved seeing people suddenly light up, because they would get that feeling of, I understand. And I think that's important for anybody, even right now, when I'm trying to learn something, to say, I've got it.
So let's fast forward to the present. So what qualities do you consider essential for living a vibrant life?
Well, I suppose it could be different for all kinds of people, but for me, one of the first things for vibrancy in anything is curiosity. Always wonder what's around the next corner. Don't get bogged down in routine. It's curious, not only with what's around you, but what people are, what they are. Be curious about them and their story, and be there to help them if necessary. And in helping, you're giving joy not only to them, but you're giving it to yourself, because that's another quality. You must be joyous. So we have curiosity, we have joy, and then there has to be a positive part of your life. And the positive part of my life is I do think that I am guided by a principle, by a wonderful principle that keeps me going. So those are important for me.
And you mentioned your father had a big
My dad was the son out of 13 children, but he was one of the sons of a Methodist minister. And he always referred to the Bible. I was raised with the Bible and so forth, but it was his spirit and his confidence that just about being always taken care of, that certainly rubbed off on me. And he had a great deal of influence that way.
Is he responsible for you adopting that philosophy? There's always something good about everything?
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. There's always something good about everything, about every person, every situation. And you can forget about that, but if you forget about it even for a minute, you have to pull yourself up shortly, which I have had to do too, because I'm not, I have challenges that come along, but I don't let the challenges get me down. Do you want to know something funny, Barbara? This is ridiculous. I even laugh at myself when I do it. I get up in the morning and go into the bathroom where there's a mirror, and I look at myself and I think, my gosh, and then I smile and say, hello, Barbara, and I'm ready to go. It's ridiculous, but
so even I would be remiss if I didn't ask about, even with life's downers, like the loss of your husband and the loss of your good friends. Even with those challenges, you're able to just move forward.
Well, yes, I was able to move forward. But what keeps me really looking at the glorious part of life is they're still with me. I talk to them. If I do something wonderful, I'll say, Dad, what do you think of that? And I know he hears me.
Really, even today?
Yeah, even today, yes, even today. And to my husband and my very dear friend who was 1 year older than I. We used to argue about our birthdays because she'd say, well, mine's the 9th and yours is the 8th, so you're really older, but it wasn't that way. But anyway, that's one way of keeping myself in a positive manner, too.
So you've always been so healthy, too, throughout all your decades. And tell us about your life today. I know you write every day.
Yes, I do. I keep that up. I write in a journal, but I also have projects. I have a story that I'm working on about one of my sisters, and I just finished recently memories for my 2 children, my childhood memories, so they knew every aspect of it as much as I could. And then, I don't think I ever told you this, Barb. I decided in this decade I'm going to maybe learn a little bit of art, and I've never done that. So I try to sketch as often as possible, and that's fun. And then I've also have been able to play duets with a friend of mine. Two pianos, and each of us on a piano. It's absolutely fabulous. We giggle and have a wonderful time.
And you also exercise 3 times a week.
I go to the gym and I work out 3 times, and I have Pilates also, that's another one, and I walk every single day.
And you play bridge.
And I play bridge, and I read a lot, love to read.
You volunteer.
I volunteer in the schools, and I love that. That keeps my hand in that.
So we're just getting to the end of our program, but I want our viewers to see a few pictures of your recent trip to Colombia. So tell us about this picture.
Oh my gosh, that was the most amazing thing that happened. We were going, my daughter was with me when we went to Colombia, and I've snorkeled all I need to ever snorkel again when I was in Mexico some time ago, but she's a water person. And so we were going to go out to this island so that she could snorkel. And I said, okay, I would just sit and write in my journal, read a book or whatever. And this woman came up to me and she said, wouldn't you like to come over and join us? This was all in Spanish, of course. None of these people spoke, and that makes such a difference to be able to speak to them that way. She said, come over and join us and have a drink with us. And I said, well, I'm not much of a drinker, but I just felt I needed to do that because they were being so hospitable. And her name turned out to be, I got it right ahead on the tip of my tongue. But she decided, now I don't know why she decided, maybe she needed something. She decided that I was the most beautiful woman she'd ever seen. And she'd look at me and she'd say, yo te amo, I love you. And she just wanted to be near me, which was fine. And so then we had the picture, and that was it. My daughter came back and thought, what's happening, Mom?
That's such a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Now, who are these people in this picture?
Oh, that's marvelous. That I love extraordinary people. I don't like just well, I like everybody, heavens, yes. But when I say extraordinary people, if the man on the street or anybody, I engage with them. My husband used to say, where did you know that person? I said, I didn't. But this picture, this man in the sunglasses, he was playing music, salsa music, which Colombia is known for. And my daughter is there, and she said, we ought to all dance. And so he gathered up all these people, this gentleman here on the right, he was so sad-faced, and all of a sudden he had a smile on his face, and that's what happened when I bought a CD.
Oh, so were you all dancing in the streets
We
then?
were dancing right around in the market.
Oh, my goodness. And one last picture I think we have time for. Who is this handsome guy?
Well, that's really interesting, and such a handsome guy. He was 38 years old and trying so hard to finish school with little money, and he was working in the little hotel that we were in Cartagena. We had traveled up to Cartagena. And he was so kind, so good, and talked and trying to learn English. I was the teacher trying to teach him. So
oh, wow.
That was just before we left to go back to Bogota.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess we have time for one more. Who is this, the musician who was in the other picture?
Oh, no, that's a picture just with that's Pablo. We got his name. I have to tell you something interesting about him, because we went back to him, and my daughter had purchased some pencils for her Pilates people, and they had wonderful little sculptured things on the top, and she didn't have enough. And so she asked him, that man led us all through all these stalls and so forth and so on. Finally, we get to this woman, there she's got hundreds of pencils. We never would have found it. And he was kind enough to do that. It was just marvelous.
Well, he obviously fell in love with you too.
Well, who knows?
And I want to add, look at how you're dressed in all these pictures. You're just dressed to the utmost.
Well, I like fashion. Perhaps I don't look like it today, but I do. And but I can tell you about all of those things. That pink shirt cost $6. The hat, I didn't bargain enough.
Oh, so you got these things in Columbia.
I got the hat there. Mm-hmm.
And what about the necklace?
The necklace too, from a vendor, yes. But then I gave the necklace away to somebody.
Well, it just looks, you couldn't look happier in these
Oh,
pictures.
I was. I am a happy person. I just really am, and it makes me happy to be happy.
And I think it's contagious because I know I'm happy when I'm around you.
That's good. That's good.
I think all your friends are.
They tell me that, but who knows?
Well, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for sharing just a little snippet of what makes your life so special, so nifty. And I know I, for one, want to be like you.
Oh, thank
At
you.
my age now, later, tomorrow.
You're a sweetheart.
I think you're wonderful.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming. Thank you for spending time with us. And I'd like to thank our Seroptimus crew and Leon Johnson, our engineer in the back room. And special thanks to the Buck Institute on Research in Aging for the use of their studio. And thank you most of all to our viewers for watching us today.